Hi, this is the video for Tuesday, December the 15th. Yesterday, Monday, we watched the first 30 minutes of the film. We didn't have time for analysis because my internet went out. So anyway, we just skipped Monday, and today we're going to watch the second half of the film. So if you were in class, awesome. If you were not in class, hopefully you found a way to see the film on your own. We're going to start class today with about 10 minutes or so of some analysis, and then we'll move into the second 30 minutes of the film. We'll finish the film tomorrow, Wednesday the 16th, and then Thursday is a day where the counselors are coming to speak to students. So anyway, here we are on day 2 of the week and really day 3 of seeing the movie. And we're going to talk about the opening scene that we saw and the Coen brothers, that's the director's decisions to stage it in the way that they did. I'm going to teach you some film language. All of this should be helpful when it comes to analysis. I'm not asking you to do new stems this week. I'm not asking you to make meaning of what I'm telling you with your writing in the interest of giving you time to catch up. But I think this stuff is fascinating, and after the break, we'll come back to it when we're thinking more about the language of analysis. So briefly, we're going to think about in all films, there's this really rich importance to the opening scene. As one critic put it, the film critic Jim Emerson, the opening shot is the most important part of the movie, at least until the final shot. And in good movies, those two are often linked. He says the opening shot can tell us a lot about how to interpret what follows. It can even be the whole movie in miniature. So we're going to look at the opening scene of True Grit. What does it tell us? How is it important to what follows? I'm going to show it again to your classmates in the Zoom and ask them what they notice. And some things that I'm hoping we can think about, some things that we notice, is trying to learn about the film language and the theme of our book all coming together. So first, when you see, I can't show you on YouTube because of the copyright. When you see the film depicting this, there's this very blurry light as Maddie's voice comes in the voiceover explaining that her father was killed. His body is revealed to us in this very fuzzy and gradual way. So there's two elements at work here. One is camera movement. That's cinematography, the way that the thing is edited and shot. The other is lighting, which is mise en scène, or the way that the thing is staged. And both of those are really interesting in this particular scene. So for camera movement, our camera starts way back and then creeps closer and closer and closer to the point where we can clearly see the body. So it's that slow panning in. This is called a tracking shot because typically the camera is mounted on a special kind of track. So it tracks forward in this case. Tracking shots are often used to explore a space in real time without cutting to different parts of the space. So in this case, the result is a kind of eerie, creepy horror movie quality of what are we going to see up there. The other thing at work here is the mise en scène, the things you put in the scene, which is what mise en scène loosely translates to. The lighting is key. So the upper shot here shows the lights of the Monarch boarding house glowing really brightly and diminishing everything around it outside, kind of the same way that when you see a house that's lit up at night, that light is so bright, it drowns out the darkness around it. That's happening here. The lower shot, though, continues to come back into the frame or come into the frame more fully until we can see it's illuminating Maddie's father on the ground. So both have a high contrast, which just means there's a lot of difference between the dark and the light. And then that creates the creepy horror movie type quality. The word for that is it's high contrast lighting or low key lighting. The sound. So I'm going to try to kind of explain it to you. I'm going to move past this pretty quickly. There's two kinds of sound in film. There's diegetic and non-diegetic sound. Diegetic sound is what you can actually interpret as part of the story. So in this case, the horse is beating its hoofs on the ground as Tom Chaney flees. That's a diegetic sound. Non-diegetic sound is anything that doesn't come from the story. It's layered on after the fact, so only the audience can hear it. In this case, the voiceover of Maddie is not from that moment in time. It's from much later in her life. So that is the non-diegetic sound. And in fact, the whole thing is dominated by non-diegetic sound. Maddie's voiceover, and then the soundtrack of this song, which is a hymn, leaning on the everlasting arms. Those two sounds are the dominant sounds in this scene. And then you've got this little piece of diegetic sound, the hoof prints, as Tom Chaney rides away. So what does all that matter? This is where analysis begins. So a good analysis will start with observation. What do I observe? And then it will try to make meaning of that. We observe the sound is dominated by this Maddie's voiceover and the song. What does that mean? We're trying to link these three things always together: the theatrical, the things in the scene, with the cinematic, which is the editing, and then the literary. What does that tell us about theme? So we learn all of these things through the voiceover narration and the tone that they establish. The tone, the soft music, the slowly moving camera. All of this is kind of a sad, wistful tone. Imagine how much it would change if there was an upbeat song or intensity in the scene, or even like low contrast lighting where everything was illuminated with sunlight. It would really give us a different tone. The tone here is about the ugliness and the beauty that's all part of it, mixed with determination. Really, it captures the wistfulness, the regretfulness of the moment. The theme, well, we don't really know fully what the theme of the movie will be, but we know, having read the book, there are a lot of religious references throughout the book. Maddie is a pretty fierce Protestant. And so that seems to already be important because there's the voiceover containing a bit of that language. And then you see the script on the black screen. It's a line from the Bible. Those flee where none pursueth. And then Maddie says, there's nothing for you but the grace of God. So a couple references to these religious moments help us understand, oh, this is going to be a book, and we know now it is a book that really highlights religious faith and determination and foundation for Maddie Ross, our main character. All right, so anyway, the main scene, the opening scene, this movie in miniature. Now I'm combining this with yesterday's, so I'm going to speed through day 3 as well. Quick history lesson about what a shot is in a film. In the early days, movies were all shot really 1 or 2 shots, and it was mostly theatrical, as if you were watching a stage performance of something, but it was on the screen for you. Over time, we've gotten better and better at editing instead of just using a single long shot. A long shot, by the way, is where you can see the actor's entire body, and sometimes it pans out to capture an entire scene. But we're going to move into more interesting worlds of editing in the modern era. This is from a movie called The Great Train Robbery, which was really the first full-length feature film ever. It was about 20 minutes long, 15 minutes maybe, and it was released in theaters to great fanfare. So we're going to learn a little bit about something called the Kuleshov Effect, and I can't show you this because of copyright, but I encourage you to go back and watch it on the slides. Basically, what it's trying to say is that the way that you edit a shot to show the reaction to something is what makes the movie layered and interesting. If you were just to film me right now, which is basically all these films are, it would be pretty one note. If you clip in things that I'm holding and looking at, and then you would see my face, you would read things about my expression just by moving those 2 shots next to each other. And we're going to see that in the really famous crossing of the river scene. So what all this is in written form, filmmakers learned pretty early on that by editing, you can produce effects that you can't get with just one shot. And here the Kuleshov effect is what goes into that, but can't show that here. We're going to instead focus on what it means in True Grit. So the scene where Maddie crosses the river to join the 2 marshals is a really good example of how that editing creates tension and moves the story further. So we're going to rewatch it in class, but here I'll just do it in stills. We're focusing on that scene where Maddie goes to the river to cross it. And we're thinking about, what does the filmmaker do to make this scene come alive for us? So first you get Maddie tromping up on her horse. It's a crane shot, meaning the camera is in a crane. And the shot moves vertically up and down. You see her approaching the river. This is a master shot or an establishing shot where you can see the scene that we're meant to appreciate as the setting for the next part of the story. Then you see Maddie looking off, realizing the two men have left. This is a medium shot. Conversations tend to happen at the medium shot from the waist up. That's where most all films live, in that space, in the medium shot. You see what she sees. This, the beginning of the shot, as she looks across the river. And then it goes back to Maddie as she tries to process this. This is Maddie's point of view, and it zooms in to try to help us see that she's focusing on those two guys in the distance. So she's panicked a little bit, looks back over her shoulder, realizes that she's being taken away from this, which is very much her goal. That tracking shot pulls back from the river. And this bit of analysis, the movement away from the river is more literal. It's not just figurative. She's getting farther away from her goal, like literally. And the tracking shot pulling back from this master shot mimics her actual movement. That's what a good film will do. Everything will be coming together in her character. So we see this cutting back to Maddie, who realizes she has to do something or she's going to lose her chance. It's important to note here that we identify with her emotionally because we identify with her visually, because we're seeing through her eyes. It's the same way that in the book we identify with her emotionally because she's the one telling the story. Well, the film needs to capture that. How does it capture it? With editing and shots like this. So the meaning is contained in the sequence of shots and not in any one shot, and that is the power of editing. We also see this in the relationship she forms with Rooster. In this scene, she tries to get little Blackie across the river, and it switches to his perspective. We get his point of view. Even though it's not omniscient narration, it's still Maddie who's the one telling the story. We really get to see her through Rooster's eyes in this scene. As she comes across, we're going to cut back over to him to get his reaction shot. And then we listen to this triumphant, non-diegetic music. We are impressed by her resilience in this scene. We empathize with Rooster, and it zooms in further and further and further on him to draw our attention there. Rooster is impressed too. Shortly after this, we see through his eyes again as LaBeef beats Maddie with a switch. Observing key events through Maddie's and Rooster's perspective has helped us empathize with both of them, really, with Rooster and with Maddie and how they solidify their relationship. Okay, that's enough for today. So then we're going to go into the film for the remaining 30 minutes of this lesson. And if you've already watched it, hang in there for more updates on video from me tomorrow.